Alright, let's continue your Elona education. So, before we really get into today's material, it occurs to me that in my last video I didn't really thoroughly cover etherwind, so I need to address a little more about that before we jump into this. For another cool piece of advice, I'm going to show you another character of mine, one of my higher level characters. Let's look at his equipment here. There's an item in the game called a Vindale Cloak, which is extremely useful for avoiding the etherwind. If I press X on here, it'll show the special abilities of this equipment. In addition to the slew of benefits that it gets me, it also has the very special effect of it protects you from etherwind. Now, this does not mean you can just go running around in etherwind and never get any kind of mutation from it, but it severely lowers the rate at which you gain ether diseases. It just gives you a lot more leeway of getting to the shelter and makes you far less likely to mutate. Now naturally, these are extremely difficult to obtain. The most reliable way to get one is by wishing for it. There will be certain rare occasions in the game where you will be prompted to make a wish. These are just, for the most part, very rare, very random events that can occur under strange circumstances. Sooner or later, you're likely to encounter a prompt to make a wish, and one of the most popular first wishes is a Vindale Cloak. I'm not going to go into too much detail about how wishing works. I advise looking it up on the wiki, because it will also suggest other good ideas for wishes, and how to type the wish that you'd like the most to make sure you get what you're asking for. So I highly advise getting one of those. Now suppose you actually are afflicted with a little ether disease like my tutorial character here is. Anything you gained from the etherwind will be labeled disease in your list of feats. And this isn't something that just goes away. It's not like a temporary effect. If you gain too many of these mutations, I think something ridiculous like 20 of them, you'll eventually die from them. But at any rate, you don't want to just go around afflicted with ether disease all the time. So how do you get rid of it? What we need is called a potion of cure corruption. This unfortunately is another rare item. There's very few ways to acquire one of these consistently. But today I'll go over probably the best way of getting a potion of cure corruption, which is casino gambling. A couple of the cities you can travel to, one of them being Palmia, and I think the other being Durfee, they will have a casino in town. And if you go over here, this is a blackjack table. Now you can just hit enter on the blackjack table or press T to use it, and you will enter a blackjack minigame. The first time you ever use one, you get 10 casino chips, and these are needed in order to play blackjack. So you'll select that you want to play, and to get a potion of cure corruption from this, you have to win at least 3 or 4 games in a row. That's when you're betting 1 chip. If you're betting 5 chips, the odds for prizes change somewhat, but I think if you bet 1 chip and you win like 5 games in a row, then you're practically guaranteed to get a potion of cure corruption. It's mostly just a regular game of blackjack. You can attempt to cheat at it if you have high dexterity, but that's risky because you run the risk of losing all of your prizes. So I only won 3 times, and I only got a breastplate. I'm gonna keep going though. Basically the number of chips that you have left is your number of chances to win 5 games in a row, which is what you really need to do. If you run out of casino chips, then you're kind of in big trouble. You need to find more to be able to get that potion. So just for the sake of education here, I'm gonna close my game without saving. This is just for the sake of education. I would never save scum in real life. I would never quit my game without saving in order to keep attempting blackjack until I get the potion of cure corruption. So where do you get more casino chips? Well, you sure don't get them from the casino. That might sound weird, but that's true. So you might notice little structures like these appear around the map at random. These are randomly generated dungeons that you can go into, and they'll mostly just be randomly laid out floors full of random items and random enemies. There will be a deepest floor with a boss monster, and just all kinds of goodies you can find. Now, I mentioned in an earlier video that you have a material slot of your inventory. These are mostly crafting ingredients, but they also include casino chips and yen coins, which have their own special functions. But materials, including these, are found in material gathering spots in these random dungeons. This right here is one such material gathering spot, and over here is another material gathering spot. You can stand on one of these and press S to search it, or press spacebar or whatever, and you start to gather these random materials from them. You'll gain more materials if you have skills that correspond with these spots. For example, gardening would help me when I'm searching through these leaves. And eventually the spot will dry up and you can't get any more materials there. This spot, likewise, I would do better at it if I had the mining skill, but I still find things occasionally. I didn't find any casino chips from those spots, but it can happen. It's always a good idea to search these spots, not just to get those casino chips, but because your materials inventory can't actually burden you in any way. You can carry an unlimited amount of materials. Here's another material spot that I'm standing on right now. Here's another leafy spot. Another material spot. Here's another material spot. Let's see if I find anything here. Here's yet another material spot. Let's try this one. Having a very hard time getting any casino chips from any of these material spots. This just indicates how relatively rare they are. So you want to always check these material locations on the off chance that you get any casino chips for yet another chance at getting the Potion of Cure Corruption. So finally I'm having a lucky streak at the casino, and I have won 5 games in a row. I finally messed up, but I got my 5 wins. So, it says a red potion has been added to my loot list. That should be the Potion of Cure Corruption. I just haven't identified it yet, because this is my first time encountering it on this character. I'm going to this town's Adventurers Guild. I'm going to have that potion identified. My red potion. It is a Potion of Cure Corruption. So I'll hit Q to drink that. And there we go, my disease is gone. I can wear boots again, but my speed is lower. But the plus side is that I'm healthy again, which is definitely good. Now let's get back to what I actually wanted to talk about for this video. Now that you have a grasp on most of the basic game mechanics, let's talk about some of the things you've probably found in your dungeon crawling time in the Puppy Cave. You can see here that I've acquired several weapons through my time in the Puppy Cave. Now, we need to talk about item identification. Pretty much all of the weapons and armor that you find in any dungeon will be unidentified when you pick them up. It means you won't really know exactly what their stats are. You can see I know several of these. I can see exactly how much damage they do, because I've been carrying them around for a long time. However, this hand axe at the top, I don't know exactly what its stats are. I just have a vague indication that it's good, but that doesn't tell me much about how it works. This is the hammer that I started with, and this is a claymore that I found. I can tell here that this claymore is probably better than the hammer I started with. If you're familiar with Dungeons & Dragons or most tabletop RPGs that use dice that have more or less than 6 sides, you will know immediately what these damage indicators mean. To anybody else, what the figure on the claymore indicates here is each attack that connects with an enemy. It would be like rolling a 7-sided die 3 times, and then adding 3 to the result. Which means that this weapon will do anywhere from 3 to 21 damage, plus 3, so in effect it would be 6 to 24 damage. The bronze hammer, on the other hand, would do anywhere between 2 and 20 damage, making the metal claymore slightly better. The stats on armor are a little more complicated and I don't understand them as thoroughly, I know that the first number here indicates DV, which I think is the dodge value, which indicates that you are more likely to dodge by this increment if you're wearing this hat. The second number is PV, or protection value, which I assume is just how much damage you block from wearing this armor. Now, this doesn't seem to have happened to me in this case, but you can sometimes find cursed equipment. If you put on a piece of cursed equipment or hold a cursed weapon, you will be unable to unequip it until you get the curse lifted. It's generally a bad idea to just put on random equipment that you find in the dungeons. If you happen to put on something that's cursed, find this person in the blue robe in a magic shop or a temple in any given town, and they can uncurse any cursed equipment you have for a price. The other option is finding a scroll of uncurse, which is less common, but they exist. Speaking of scrolls, generally in a roguelike, there will be scrolls of certain effects, and you won't know what any of them do until you read one for the first time. So I have 4 of these old scrolls. I'm going to try to read one and see what happens. I don't know what happened. Oh, yes I do. It was a scroll of curse. So I think... well, that should have cursed a piece of my equipment, but I don't know that it actually did. Maybe I'm wearing something that protects me from curses, I don't know. But cursed equipment can be a pain because it can do random bad things to you, like make you teleport randomly all over the map. Generally bad stuff that you don't want. Plus, you want to be able to change your equipment, obviously. Now, if you don't want to take the risk of using something that's cursed, you'll generally want to identify it first. This can be done with scrolls that you find. There are scrolls of identify, or you can go to an adventurer's guild in any town. That'll be the cloak symbol right here. You find this person with the red hair inside the adventurer's guild. That person is a wizard, and they can identify your items. In this case here, it cost me 288 gold pieces to identify one item. I only have 471 gold pieces. So let's identify something that I have in my inventory. Like this pair of shoes. Let's see how this pair of shoes is. Alright, so they've been identified as a pair of glass shoes. I know they're not cursed. They don't have any kind of enchantments on them or anything. They give me 3 to my dodge value and 0 to my protection. I don't want to wear those shoes particularly. So let's try and sell them. Now, I take these to the shopkeeper. Turns out they're only worth 3 gold pieces. I spent 288 gold pieces to find out I'll only get 3 gold pieces for these shoes. If you think about it, that really wasn't worth the investment. See, in a typical dungeon crawler, maybe a Diablo game, your number one source of income is usually going to be finding equipment out in the world or out in dungeons, taking it back to town and selling it. This is not the case in Elona. That is absolutely not a sustainable way to make good money. So how should you make money? I'll tell you in a little while. I have some more items to talk about. When I was dungeon crawling, I found a lot of monster body parts, eyes, hearts, bones. These aren't really good for much except selling, and look, even in this case, they're not that good for that. I get 1 gold piece for each one that I sell. Some other things you might find occasionally when killing monsters are these cards and figurines. These items for the most part don't serve a practical purpose. They're only really good if you decide to buy a deed of a museum. If you decide to open up a museum, you stock it with figurines and cards of monsters. But until you have a museum, I would say just stockpile those in your house. Just hold on to them for later. Or if you never plan to open a museum, you can get rid of them. But maybe I'll talk about museums in the future. So much like scrolls, any potions that you find will be unidentified until you try one for the first time. Green potion, blue potion, I don't know what either of these do. I could drink them and find out, but it's probably not worth the risk. I'm just gonna hold on to those until I have money and can get them identified. Now, wands work the same way as scrolls and potions. I found a couple of wands, and so I might like to try one. I might like to see what they do. Usually, a rod is a sort of limited use magical item, so it lets you cast a spell a limited number of times even if you're not a magic user. To use a rod, you need to use a capital Z. I can pick this rusty rod, try and fire it off to the right, but nothing happened. I'll try this iron rod. Well, it says I need a target for that one, so that does no good. This rusty rod I'm going to try again. Instead of picking a direction, I'm going to hit enter, and I think that should use it on myself. Well, I wasn't able to use it. Let me try again. Alright, I just used that rod on myself, and it turned out to be a rod of teleportation. So now, when I try to use it again, it's identified as a rod of teleportation. I can use that on myself, or on enemies that I want to get away from me, or on allies, really anybody, and it'll teleport them to a random location on the same map. There are quite a few wand effects, and they usually have a spell that corresponds with them that you can also learn. Again, wands are sort of the non-magic user alternative. So one of them might fire a firebolt. That would be a way to use that spell without actually knowing the spell. I'm going to try and use this iron rod. I just used it on that rat and it slowed the rat down, so now I know that's a rod of slow. That's one way to find these things out if you don't want to pay to have them identified. One thing that I meant to talk about in the last video, but never got around to, was leveling up and how that works. I'm level 4 right now, and I have not done any actual leveling up. So if you open up your character sheet with C, use 6 to go to the right, I have 24 skill points that I can spend. So let's say I want to improve my negotiation to get better prices in the shops. I can hit enter on that, and it increases the amount. Now the percentages that you see next to all of your skills here, that is your potential. Basically, a higher percentage means it's easier to level up that skill, and it should get you more skill points when you choose to put points into it. Like my tactics is 97%. If I level that up, it didn't even go up a full point. It went up like 2/100ths, or 2/10ths of a point, basically. However, my heavy armor skill is 190%. If I level that up, it went up 4/10ths of a point. Much more. So that's a good way to prioritize which skills you want to level up. I'll definitely want to level up longsword since I just found one. That's a full 4/10ths of a point every time I level that up, and the potential is increasing. Meaning as I use my longsword in the real world, out there in combat, I'll be more likely to level up my longsword skill as I use it. Down here are resistances. I think you can even use your skill points to level those up. Never mind, I was wrong, you can't. But you can generally see all of these skills that have a .000, those are things that I have not used yet. Throwing is a 7.015, that's because I've fought some enemies with a thrown weapon. Your skills increase by using those skills, in addition to the points you get when you level up. Now weightlifting here, that means basically your carrying capacity. Healing means your health regeneration, basically. Now unfortunately, the only way to level these up, for weightlifting you just need to carry a lot of burdensome equipment around. The more time you spend burdened, like the more turns that go by that you spend burdened, the faster your weightlifting skill will go up. If you get injured and you heal from those injuries, your healing skill will increase. It's kind of a pain that outside of spending your skill points, that's the only way to level these up, but that's the way it works. Now this hasn't happened to me yet, but when you get to level 5, you can choose a new feat. That whole feat list that you got when you first generated your character, it'll come up again and you can pick a new one. That's every 5 levels. Now, also in the Adventurers Guild, you'll see this person in brown clothes. That's the skill trainer. If you talk to this person, you can hit train me, and you can increase the potential of your skills by paying this person platinum coins. That's this icon on the HUD down here. As for the way you get platinum coins, I'll go over that in the next video when I talk about how you make money. But in addition to training your skill potential, this person can also teach you new skills, like skills that you do not have on your character yet. So my character has no idea how to pick locks. If I pay 5 platinum coins to this person, then I get the basic lock picking skill, and I can start learning that and leveling that up. My advice generally is before you start training your potential, giving these people platinum coins to increase your current skills, go around and learn as many skills as you possibly can. Even if they are skills that you don't think you're going to use very much, there is no harm in having them. All it means is that things in the game will be slightly easier later on should you decide to pursue them. And you know, if you get the fishing skill and you decide you never want to fish in the entire game, that's fine. It still doesn't hurt you to have the skill. It can only help you in the future, and it will not harm you in any way. I think that's about all I have time for in the course of this video. So in the next one, we should finally be able to get around to talking about making money and doing quests. A very important thing that you're gonna need to know. Stay tuned for that one. It's next time, I promise.